Researchers recently stumbled upon startling revelations. Pontius Pilate, the infamous Roman official who ordered Jesus' crucifixion, had shared secrets about Jesus before his own death.
So that Jesus dies. The Romans are the unwilling participants who never want to see this, who would stop it if they could. This is completely spurious history.
These disclosures have the potential to upend everything we know about Jesus as the Son of God. Pilate, a pivotal figure in the story of Jesus, held on to hidden details until his final moments.
Not only has he got rid of Jesus, who was a troublemaker, and he wanted to get rid of him anyway, but he's also goaded the chief priests into this terrible declaration that they have no king but Caesar.
But what exactly did he reveal? Could there have been a scandal connecting them? Join us as we uncover the shocking details contained in Pontius Pilate's mysterious letter about Jesus. Pontius Pilate, the fifth Roman-appointed governor of Judea, served under Emperor Tiberius from approximately 26 to 37 AD. Known for presiding over Jesus' trial and ordering his crucifixion, Pilate's role is pivotal in Christian history, earning mentions in both the Apostles' and Nicene creeds. The Gospels depict Pilate as reluctant to condemn Jesus, adding a complex layer to his legacy. Intriguingly, Ethiopian Christian tradition
Ethiopia by missionaries. This is homegrown Christianity.
Claims that Pilate later converted to Christianity. He is venerated as a martyr and a saint, a belief once shared by the Coptic Church, which commemorates him with a feast day on June 19th or 25th. This unexpected twist in Pilate's story adds a fascinating dimension to our understanding of his place in history and faith. Before Pilate issued the order for Jesus' execution, Jesus was first brought before Caiaphas, the high priest, who orchestrated a biased trial against him. This trial occurred in front of a gathering of religious leaders, including teachers of the law and elders. Among those watching from a distance was one of Jesus' disciples, Peter. The Sanhedrin, the top Jewish council consisting of 70 members, primarily Sadducees, Pharisees, and priests, led by the high priest, were determined to find grounds to condemn Jesus to death. Despite their relentless efforts, they initially found no solid evidence. Finally, two individuals came forward, accusing Jesus of threatening to destroy the temple based on his statement that he could rebuild it in 3 days. This accusation stemmed from a misunderstanding of Jesus' teachings about his resurrection. He had spoken metaphorically, referring to his body as the temple that would rise again in 3 days. As the tension in the trial escalated, Caiaphas directly confronted Jesus, demanding to know if he claimed to be the Messiah, the Son of God. Jesus responded affirmatively, hinting profoundly at his divine nature and future glory. He prophesied that they would see him seated at the right hand of God and coming with the clouds of heaven, a declaration that sealed his fate and set the stage for the events to follow. Caiaphas, a key figure in religious leadership, condemned Jesus' words as blasphemy, an act of disrespect towards God, especially serious under Jewish law. When Jesus claimed to be the Son of God, the Jewish leaders viewed it as a grave insult to their faith, leading them to declare him guilty. Their condemnation was not limited to words. They also physically attacked Jesus, spitting in his face and beating him. The Jewish leaders had several reasons for wanting Jesus dead. Firstly, Jesus openly challenged their authority, often calling them hypocrites. They also disapproved of his social circle, as he associated with sinners, including prostitutes and tax collectors, whom they regarded as morally impure. Additionally, Jesus defied their strict Sabbath laws by performing healings on that day. His claims about himself, particularly being the Son of God and the promised Savior, were fundamentally unacceptable to them. These actions and declarations collectively fueled their determination to see him executed. After the Jewish leaders deemed Jesus guilty of a crime punishable by death, they brought him before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. This was necessary because the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council, lacked the authority to carry out capital punishment. They needed Pilate's approval to proceed with Jesus' execution. Their accusations against Jesus were strategic. They claimed he was corrupting the people and encouraging them not to pay taxes to Caesar, and they alleged he declared himself as Christ, a king. Notably, Jesus never explicitly told people to withhold taxes from the Roman authorities. Pilate, intrigued, asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus responded calmly, acknowledging Pilate's words but implying that the title was not of his own making. Instead of engaging in a direct argument, Jesus chose not to debate with Pilate, understanding that Pilate's concern was not with theological truth, but with potential political unrest. Pilate, after questioning Jesus, turned to the chief priests and the crowd, declaring that he found no basis for a charge against Jesus. From the Roman perspective, Jesus was innocent and had committed no crime warranting crucifixion. Pilate's verdict highlighted a crucial distinction. While the Jewish leaders saw Jesus as a threat to their religious authority, the Roman governor saw no threat to Roman law and order. Pilate, seeking a way to extricate himself from the volatile situation, asked if Jesus was from Galilee. Upon learning that Jesus was indeed a Galilean, Pilate saw an opportunity to shift the responsibility and sent Jesus to Herod Antipas, who governed Galilee during that time. Herod Antipas, the son of Herod the Great, ruled from 4 BC to 39 AD. However, unlike his father and brother, Herod Antipas wielded limited power in Jerusalem. While he might have owned property there, it is unlikely he was present for religious reasons, as he was not particularly known for his piety. Herod's presence in Jerusalem during this period could have been a political move to maintain appearances and possibly garner support from those in Galilee who were aware of his presence. When Jesus was brought before him, Herod was intrigued, but ultimately found no reason to condemn him, mirroring Pilate's earlier conclusion. This back and forth between Pilate and Herod underscores the complexities and political maneuverings surrounding Jesus' trial and eventual crucifixion. The biblical accounts depict King Herod's eager anticipation to meet Jesus, having heard much about his miracles and teachings. However, when Herod finally encountered Jesus, his expectations were dashed as Jesus remained silent in response to Herod's inquiries. This silence left Herod frustrated, especially amidst the strong accusations brought forth by the religious leaders. Herod's interest in Jesus stemmed partly from concerns about potential threats to his rule, given his previous experiences with figures like John the Baptist. John's outspoken criticism of Herod's marriage to Herodias had raised alarms for Herod, particularly due to public sentiment against the union. Despite rumors that Herod sought Jesus' demise, his interactions with Jesus were marked by curiosity rather than hostility. Herod's lack of genuine interest in religious matters left Jesus unresponsive to his questions. Herod and his entourage treated Jesus with mockery and disdain, even subjecting him to ridicule by dressing him in regal attire before returning him to Pilate. This encounter serves as a peculiar episode within the broader narrative of Jesus' trial and crucifixion, highlighting the complex dynamics between political power and religious authority in the events leading up to Jesus' death. When Jesus appeared before Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee and Perea, Herod's initial curiosity quickly turned to disdain as Jesus remained silent and seemingly indifferent to Herod's interest. Feeling slighted by Jesus' apparent disregard, Herod's mild dislike transformed into outright contempt, leading him to treat Jesus with disrespect and mockery. In a bid to belittle Jesus and assert his own superiority, Herod ordered his soldiers to dress Jesus in luxurious garments, sarcastically acknowledging Jesus' alleged claim to kingship. This act served not only to ridicule Jesus, but also to showcase Herod's authority and dominance, particularly in the face of someone perceived as a threat. Moreover, the relationship between Herod and Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, was intricate and fraught with tension. Despite initial discord, the shared challenge of dealing with Jesus unexpectedly brought them closer. Pilate's decision to allow Jesus' unjust punishment reflects the intense pressure he faced from Jewish leaders and the volatile atmosphere in Jerusalem during Passover. Pilate prioritized maintaining order and stability above all else, even at the expense of justice. Thus, despite Jesus' innocence, Pilate yielded to political expediency, allowing him to be unfairly treated to appease the volatile situation. This decision underscored the complexities of power dynamics and political maneuvering in the tumultuous events leading to Jesus' crucifixion. Interestingly, there was a hidden custom conducted during the Passover festival in Rome. the trial of faith. During the Passover festival in ancient Rome, a captivating custom unfolded. The governor pardoned one prisoner chosen by the people. Pilate, the governor, faced a challenging decision between two men: Barabbas, notorious troublemaker, and Jesus Christ, a figure some hailed as the chosen one. Pilate sensed jealousy at play in Jesus' case and sought the crowd's input, posing a pivotal question: who shall I release, Barabbas or Jesus, known as the Messiah? This moment, chronicled in the Gospel of Matthew, portrays Pilate, the judge, grappling with a profound dilemma. Adding to the tension, Pilate's wife had a troubling dream that affirmed Jesus' innocence, urging her husband to spare him. Despite her warning, Pilate's verdict failed to satisfy the high priests and elders, determined to protect their standing and ensure Jesus' execution. Their fervent desire to shed Jesus' blood galvanized a small mob, plunging the trial into chaos. This captivating narrative vividly illustrates the intricate web of political and religious tensions that engulfed Pilate during that tumultuous time. Amidst the chaos and uproar, a startling twist occurred. Both the leaders and the crowd fervently pleaded for the release of Barabbas, a notorious criminal guilty of serious offenses like murder and rebellion. This begs a perplexing question. Why would Pilate even entertain the notion of setting free a clearly guilty man like Barabbas? And what compelled the chief priests and elders, entrusted with upholding justice, to demand Barabbas's freedom while advocating for Jesus' condemnation? Pilate, bewildered by this baffling request, sought clarification from the crowd. Yet, instead of reconsidering, they vehemently clamored for Jesus' crucifixion, marking the first explicit mention of such a punishment during the trials. Troubled by their unwavering insistence, Pilate questioned the rationale behind their fervor, asserting his belief in Jesus' innocence, an echo of the central theme in Jesus' teachings. Despite his attempts to propose a lesser punishment for Jesus, emphasizing his innocence, the crowd's outcry only intensified, leaving Pilate with no recourse but to acquiesce to their demands. This pivotal moment underscores the power of mob mentality and the precarious balance Pilate navigated between his own convictions and the pressures of the crowd. To absolve himself of responsibility for Jesus' fate, Pilate made a dramatic gesture, publicly washing his hands to signify his innocence in front of the crowd. He acquiesced to the demands of the mob and released Barabbas, a notorious criminal, while handing Jesus over to them. But was Jesus truly guilty of the charges leveled against him by the Jewish leaders? They accused him of violating religious laws, particularly by healing people on the Sabbath. Whenever Jesus visited the synagogue, the Pharisees and legal experts closely scrutinized his actions, hoping to catch him in a transgression. They eagerly awaited an opportunity to trap him, such as by questioning the permissibility of healing on the Sabbath. In some accounts, like those found in Mark and Luke, Jesus initiates a profound dialogue by raising questions about the Sabbath regulations. During this period, there was considerable debate among Jewish religious leaders regarding the interpretation of certain laws. However, in Matthew's portrayal of Jesus, these complex discussions are presented in a compelling and accessible manner, easily understood by all. Jesus doesn't simply provide straightforward answers, he vividly illustrates his teachings through memorable parables. For instance, he describes a scenario where a sheep falls into a pit on the Sabbath, prompting his audience to consider whether they would extend compassion and assistance to the distressed animal. This approach resonates deeply with listeners, leaving a lasting impression on their hearts and minds. Absolutely, Jesus' actions and teachings often emphasize the importance of compassion and kindness over strict adherence to religious rules. By healing the man with the withered hand on the Sabbath, Jesus demonstrated his commitment to prioritizing human welfare above legalistic observance. However, instead of receiving acclaim for this act of compassion, Jesus faced criticism and hostility from the religious leaders, particularly the Pharisees. The Pharisees' antagonism toward Jesus stemmed from his challenges to their authority and their inability to comprehend his teachings. Their resentment intensified as Jesus repeatedly flouted their rigid Sabbath regulations, further exacerbating the tension between them. The situation escalated when the Pharisees allied themselves with the Herodians, a faction supportive of King Herod, to plot against Jesus. This unlikely partnership underscored the extent to which Jesus' actions threatened the established order and authority of the religious leaders. Among the numerous stories of Jesus' Sabbath healings, one particularly notable instance stands out, illustrating the profound impact of his actions and the fierce opposition he faced from those threatened by his message of compassion and liberation. The Sabbath healing. The Sabbath healing stories in the Gospels often highlight the tension between Jesus and the religious leaders regarding Sabbath observance. However, there's a unique instance in Luke's Gospel where Jesus heals someone on the Sabbath without encountering any confrontation. This healing occurs in a private home rather than a public setting like a synagogue. Despite knowing the strict Sabbath regulations upheld by the Pharisees, Jesus deliberately chose to heal on that day. It's important to note that Jesus wasn't violating God's law, but rather challenging the Pharisees' interpretation and application of the law. As stated in Matthew 5:17, Jesus came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. By healing on the Sabbath, Jesus demonstrated that acts of compassion and mercy supersede rigid adherence to legalistic rules. Jesus' actions served to expose the hypocrisy of the Pharisees, who prioritized external observance of the Sabbath over genuine care for those in need. He sought to teach them, and all who would listen, that love and compassion should always take precedence, even if it meant deviating from man-made regulations. In doing so, Jesus offered a powerful example of living out the true spirit of the law, which is rooted in love for God and neighbor. Jesus' encounters with opposition regarding his Sabbath healings revealed profound insights into the hypocrisy of the religious leaders and the true meaning of Sabbath observance. On 3 separate occasions, Jesus confronted the Pharisees' narrow interpretation of Sabbath laws, highlighting their inconsistency and lack of compassion. Jesus pointed out the irony of the Pharisees' willingness to attend to their animals on the Sabbath while refusing to extend the same care to a fellow human being. He questioned whether they would hesitate to untie their ox or donkey to lead it to water on the Sabbath, exposing their double standard and criticizing their failure to show compassion to a daughter of Abraham. Furthermore, Jesus challenged the religious leaders' understanding of Sabbath laws by posing a fundamental question: is it lawful to do good or to harm, to save life, or to destroy it on the Sabbath? His healing acts served as a powerful reminder that the essence of morality and compassion should always take precedence over rigid adherence to legalistic rules. The leaders' silence in response to Jesus' question underscored their inability or unwillingness to recognize the righteousness of doing good, even on the Sabbath. Ultimately, Jesus' teachings and actions revealed that true Sabbath observance is not about rigidly following rules, but about embodying love, compassion, and the preservation of life. Using Sabbath regulations as a pretext for neglect or cruelty was shown to be a distortion of divine law, while prioritizing kindness and the well-being of others reflects the true spirit of Sabbath rest. Indeed, Jesus' Sabbath healings served as powerful demonstrations of the true purpose of the Sabbath, to benefit humanity and provide a time of rest and spiritual rejuvenation. As stated in the book of Mark, the Sabbath was made for humans, not humans for the Sabbath, a profound reminder that God's intention for this sacred day was to offer relief and renewal to his people. By healing on the Sabbath, Jesus aligned his actions with God's original design for the Sabbath, emphasizing the importance of compassion and care for others. His healings were not only acts of mercy, but also profound expressions of God's love and grace in action. This narrative serves as a poignant reminder that sometimes our rigid adherence to rules or traditions can lead us astray from the true essence of our faith. It encourages us to regularly evaluate our beliefs and practices in light of the teachings of the Bible, ensuring that they align with God's intentions and purposes. Additionally, it's worth noting that Jesus' teachings and actions often confounded the Romans, who struggled to comprehend the deeper meanings behind his words and deeds. This highlights the profound and transformative nature of Jesus' message, which transcended cultural and societal boundaries, challenging established norms and prompting profound reflection and reconsideration. Jesus' radical message of redemption. Jesus indeed faced a serious accusation when he was accused of claiming he could destroy the temple and rebuild it within 3 days. In the cultural and religious context of the time, tampering with the sacred temple was considered an act of blasphemy, carrying severe consequences, including death. This accusation not only threatened to expose Jesus as a fraud, but also posed a significant challenge to his teachings and mission. However, Jesus' statement had a deeper, symbolic meaning that transcended the literal interpretation. Throughout the Gospels, he frequently spoke about his impending death and resurrection, foreshadowing the transformative events that would ultimately fulfill his divine mission. His reference to the temple's destruction and reconstruction symbolized his own death and resurrection, signifying the spiritual renewal and restoration he would bring about through his sacrifice. While Jesus' disciples initially harbored expectations of him establishing an earthly kingdom and overthrowing oppressive powers like the Romans, Jesus challenged their understanding of his mission. He emphasized that his reign as the promised Messiah would not be characterized by earthly power and violence, but by sacrificial love and spiritual redemption. Instead of seeking political dominance, Jesus aimed to establish a kingdom founded on righteousness, compassion, and reconciliation. This profound shift in perspective challenged the disciples' preconceived notions and invited them to embrace a deeper understanding of Jesus' mission and the nature of his kingdom. It underscored the central theme of Jesus' teachings, the transformative power of love, humility, and self-sacrifice in bringing about God's kingdom on earth. Absolutely, Jesus' decision to dine with sinners held profound symbolic significance, reflecting the essence of his mission on earth. When Jesus called Matthew, a tax collector, to follow him, he demonstrated his willingness to extend grace and acceptance to those deemed social outcasts. By sharing a meal with Matthew and his associates, many of whom were tax collectors and sinners, Jesus emphasized his message of redemption and inclusion. This act challenged societal norms and religious conventions as it symbolized Jesus' mission to reach out to those who recognized their need for spiritual healing. It highlighted Jesus' profound compassion and unconditional love for all people, regardless of their past mistakes or societal status. In essence, it underscored the core principles of Jesus' teachings: love, forgiveness, and acceptance for all. Despite facing criticism from the scribes and Pharisees, who viewed tax collectors with disdain, Jesus remained steadfast in his commitment to spend time with those society deemed unworthy or unclean. His actions exemplified his unwavering dedication to seek out and offer salvation to the lost, reflecting his overarching mission to bring reconciliation and restoration to all humanity. These religious figures were highly respected for their strict adherence to the law and tradition, and their actions carried significant influence in Jewish society. However, their exclusivity and tendency to distance themselves from those they deemed as sinners created a stark divide within the community. Tax collectors in particular were viewed with disdain as collaborators with the despised Romans, and associating with them was seen as scandalous and unacceptable. Despite societal expectations, Jesus deliberately chose to break these barriers by dining with sinners, thereby challenging conventional norms and emphasizing the availability of repentance and forgiveness to all. As Jesus' ministry expanded, his popularity among society's outcasts grew, offering them a sense of hope and inclusion previously unimaginable. With Matthew as a close companion, Jesus naturally gravitated towards spending time with those marginalized by society. This aligns with Jesus' overarching mission, as mentioned in Mark 2:17, to reach out to those who recognize their need for spiritual healing. Jesus' willingness to associate with sinners and outcasts reflected his profound understanding of human frailty and his boundless compassion for all people, regardless of their societal status or past mistakes. It underscored his message of love, forgiveness, and redemption, inviting all to experience the transformative power of God's grace. Absolutely, Jesus' actions consistently defied societal norms and cultural boundaries, demonstrating his unwavering commitment to compassion and love for all people. His interactions with individuals from diverse backgrounds and marginalized communities exemplified his belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. During the feast at Matthew's house, Jesus challenged the Pharisees' rigid rules and emphasized the importance of inner transformation over external appearances. By dining with sinners, he highlighted his concern for people's spiritual well-being rather than their societal status or past actions. Throughout his ministry, Jesus consistently reached out to those in need, regardless of their cultural or social standing. He engaged in conversation with a Samaritan woman, a group typically marginalized by Jewish society, demonstrating his willingness to break down cultural barriers and extend compassion to all. He also forgave an immoral woman, showing mercy and understanding instead of judgment. Jesus' actions extended even further as he healed a Syrophoenician woman's daughter and touched a leper, both of whom were considered untouchable by societal standards. He also visited the home of Zacchaeus, a tax collector, and expressed his love and acceptance despite the social stigma attached to his profession. In each encounter, Jesus exemplified his belief in looking beyond cultural boundaries and recognizing the humanity in everyone. His life and teachings serve as a powerful reminder of the transformative power of compassion and the importance of reaching out to those who are marginalized or deemed unlovable by society. The compassionate Savior. Jesus' primary purpose was to bring salvation and redemption to all people, regardless of their societal status or past mistakes. He came not to condemn but to save, as stated in John 3:17, emphasizing God's desire for reconciliation and restoration rather than judgment. Jesus' ministry was characterized by boundless compassion and unwavering love for humanity. He prioritized reaching out to those who were marginalized or considered sinners by society, demonstrating through his actions that everyone deserves kindness, understanding, and the opportunity for spiritual transformation. By mingling with those labeled as bad or outcasts, Jesus shattered societal norms and cultural barriers, showing that God's love extends to all people, regardless of their background or perceived flaws. His willingness to share meals and spend time with them conveyed a profound message of acceptance and inclusion, inviting them to experience the transformative power of God's grace. Through his miracles and teachings, Jesus revealed his true nature as a compassionate and merciful Savior, close to God and capable of extraordinary acts of love and healing. His genuine care for others left a lasting impact on those he encountered, inspiring them to see beyond their past mistakes and embrace a life of faith and forgiveness. Jesus indeed defied societal expectations and norms, prioritizing love, mercy, and understanding above legalistic adherence to religious regulations. At Matthew's party, Jesus seized the opportunity to share the message of God's love and grace with those who needed it most. Despite facing criticism and disapproval from the religious elite, Jesus remained steadfast in his mission to reach out to the marginalized and offer them acceptance and hope. The incident of the woman caught in adultery further exemplifies Jesus' commitment to love and forgiveness. As the scribes and Pharisees sought to trap him in a legalistic dilemma, Jesus responded with wisdom and compassion. He didn't condemn the woman, but instead offered her grace and the opportunity for repentance. Jesus' actions throughout his ministry challenged the prevailing norms of his society, demonstrating that true righteousness is found not in adherence to external rules, but in a heart transformed by love and compassion. He welcomed everyone, regardless of their past, meeting them in their circumstances and offering them the chance for spiritual renewal and reconciliation with God. Despite the scribes and Pharisees' attempts to trap Jesus in a legalistic dilemma, he responded with remarkable wisdom and compassion. Rather than engaging in a verbal debate or rushing to judgment, Jesus' calm demeanor and simple yet profound gesture of drawing in the sand commanded the attention of everyone present, setting the stage for a powerful and transformative encounter. His response, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her," not only diffused the tension, but also exposed the hypocrisy and self-righteousness of the accusers. As the accusers gradually dispersed, confronted with the realization of their own imperfections, Jesus remained alone with the woman, offering her grace and forgiveness instead of condemnation. His question, "Has no one condemned you?" followed by his declaration, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and from now on sin no more, epitomized his message of love, mercy, and the transformative power of grace. Moreover, your explanation of the legal and political implications of Jesus' response provides valuable context, illustrating the complexities of the situation and the various factors at play. By navigating this delicate balance between upholding divine principles and challenging human interpretations, Jesus demonstrated his unparalleled wisdom and compassion, leaving a profound impact on both the woman and those who witnessed the encounter. In this story, Jesus is presented with a moral dilemma that tests his wisdom and compassion. The crowd's eagerness to stone the woman reflects the harshness of ancient justice systems, where punishment was often severe and unforgiving. Jesus' response not only demonstrates his belief in forgiveness and redemption, but also challenges the hypocrisy of those who are quick to judge others while ignoring their flaws. Moreover, this event showcases Jesus' ability to navigate delicate political and legal situations. By neither condoning the woman's actions nor endorsing her punishment, Jesus sidesteps the traps set by both religious law and Roman authority. His response transcends the narrow confines of legalism and instead emphasizes the importance of mercy and understanding in human interactions. In ancient Judea, the Pharisees and scribes were big shots in matters of religion. They were like the experts on Jewish law and often seen as the go-to moral guides. But when they brought a woman caught in adultery to Jesus, their intentions seemed shady. Some folks think they were trying to trip up Jesus or test his knowledge of the law. What's really interesting is where this all went down, right in the hustle and bustle of the temple in Jerusalem, probably in the court of the Gentiles, where people from all walks of life mingled. Picture the scene: Jesus being grilled in front of a mixed bag of supporters and skeptics. And then there's Jesus getting down in the dirt and scribbling something mysterious. Scholars have been scratching their heads over what it meant ever since. Some reckon it ties back to old-school passages about judgment and forgiveness, highlighting the big themes of justice and mercy. Pontius Pilate, the big-shot Roman governor of Judea back in the day, played a major role in Jesus' crucifixion. Even though he knew Jesus was innocent, he caved to pressure and sentenced him to death. This whole ordeal shines a spotlight on the messy power struggles between the Romans and the Jewish religious leaders. Pilate's hesitation to step in shows just how tangled things were in those times, with politics and convenience often trumping justice. And let's talk about crucifixion. It was the worst of the worst when it came to Roman punishments, reserved for the lowest of the low. Imagine the agony and humiliation Jesus faced on that cross, but here's the kicker: Jesus faced it all willingly, showing just how committed he was to his cause. What do you think about Pontius Pilate's jaw-dropping decision on Jesus' fate? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you dug this video, hit that like button and subscribe.